Hi, I'm John. This is my 72 Nova, and this is my friend Jeff. He's going to be giving me a hand today. We're going to be working on putting a new Speedway subframe into the car to replace the old damaged one that's original to the car. Jeff, you got anything to say about that?
About the damage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might know a little bit about that.
Yeah, I got this car from Jeff about, God, what was that, 2006, 2007. So almost we're about to hit 2024. So I got it from him about 18 years ago, almost 16 years ago. My math's not mathing right now. But yeah, about 18 years ago almost. And he had crashed it, doing stuff he shouldn't have done, into a light pole and kind of messed up this front fender, put the tire into the light pole that bent the control arms and damaged the holes in the subframe where the control arm attaches to the subframe. So instead of trying to fix that, I'm just going to go ahead and replace it with something a little bit nicer. We already weighed this new subframe. It comes out to, and then with all the peripheral gear, all the suspension, the control arms, the new brakes, power steering rack, spindles, all that stuff, came out to about 304 pounds total. So we're going to remove the old subframe with all that same equipment from underneath the car and weigh that, and we'll see if there's any weight savings or weight gain possibly, because we do have bigger brakes, power steering rack that we didn't have, and we've got a sway bar that we didn't have. So we'll see what the end result is, but should be an interesting little project, and we'll talk to you guys in a bit. This is not meant to be a how-to video to help people swap out their subframes. That's a pretty simple task. This is more about trying to show people what you get with the Speedway Motors subframe, what it costs, and what the trade-offs are versus it and a factory style subframe as far as weight and cost. There are other alternatives out there. I know Detroit Speed makes another subframe which costs about $9,500 street price. It does already come powder coated and I believe assembled, which makes things maybe a little easier, maybe a little more difficult, but it's an option. It's also more than twice as expensive as this option. However, there's also a couple other subframe providers out there. If you do have a damaged subframe like mine, you could put in a factory reproduction subframe, and those are about $1,400 currently. But if you had a fairly original car, you wanted to keep that original look, that would definitely be the way to go. It would also save money, so if you're on a budget, that's not a bad way to go. But that is just $1,400 for a bare subframe. That doesn't come with the control arms, doesn't come with the new steering rack, doesn't come with any of the other gear that came with this particular subframe. So it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison. Besides weight, the Speedway Motors subframe is a little bit more modern construction. It does seem to take up a bit less space within the engine compartment. It's a little bit less bulky. I'm hoping that gives me a little bit more clearance as far as headers and the steering rack, and being able to get the engine in and having just general space within the engine bay and looking a little bit cleaner, a little bit more modern. I'm also hoping with that box steel construction that it is going to be a bit more rigid. It wouldn't have been all that difficult to come up with some sort of rig to test the deflection of the torsional load on this new Speedway motor subframe versus that of the old subframe, even though the old subframe was damaged and generally old. But honestly, I don't think that should really fall on the consumer. If I were the person or the entity that was making and selling these subframes, I would test that and I would advertise it if it was a better result than what the factory ones put out. The control arms, there may be a better design as far as torsional rigidity and sprung weight or semi-sprung weight. I didn't go through and disassemble the old subframe, and once again, I don't have the ability to test things for like torsional load on the old cross members anyways. So these are kind of more assumptions than anything, but they definitely look a little bit nicer. They look a little more modern, and as part of the really about 40 to 50 pounds of weight savings for the subframe and the suspension components, I do expect to see, at least some marginal ability improvements here. Additionally, the updated chassis does come with a bit more adjustability than the old subframes do. You can adjust toe in and toe out on the old subframes, but the Speedway Motors one, as well as the Detroit Speed one, allows you to adjust your camber and caster as well. They come with shims that allow you to change the camber, and they also have caster adjustments, which can help you change the handling to better suit your driving style and give you a little bit better performance when it comes to making turns and just driving even straight down the road as far as the caster goes. So looking forward to seeing how this all pans out. My Nova was a bit of a wallowing pig years and years ago when I was still driving it around, and I'm looking forward to seeing what these changes do make, how they kind of can be realized when you're actually driving the vehicle, but that's still probably at least a year away, and I've still got some things to do as far as paint, and then I've got a new differential that'll be here in a week or two. I'll be putting new back tires on, front tires. I'm about to build out the suspension, put the front brakes on, and then I've got to send this thing off for paint, get it back, put engine, transmission, drive shaft in, all the electronics, and we'll go from there. Eventually I'll put the interior in, but that's kind of like my last priority. I want to get this thing back into a rolling, functioning car, shake it down a little bit, and then I'll worry about kind of the detail, make it look nice kind of stuff later on. So that's all I got for now, and let's wrap this up. All right, so we just finished putting the Speedway Motors front subframe into this 72 Nova. It went pretty well. It did take us a few hours. I didn't even keep track of when we actually started. We stopped and we had food because I was keen to be, pretty irritable like I do. But we did get the old subframe out. We weighed it with all the control arms, the suspension, the disc brakes, and all the steering mechanism on. It came out to 343 pounds, which is about 40 pounds more than the Speedway Motors. Jeff, what do you think about the disassembly, reassembly?
First time for everything. It's not super complicated. Just handling the large components and trying to find your balance in the vehicle so that it's not teetering off of your jacks and supporting all that weight. But all in all, it's not the most difficult job in the world. First time.
Yeah, it was my first time replacing a subframe for sure. It went really quick. I already had the engine out of the car. We had to basically disconnect the front brake lines in order to free up the subframe. There was a fuel line we had to disconnect, a ground cable that was running to the trunk that was attached to the frame rail that we had to disconnect, but there was no major work for us to really do other than to take the 6 bolts and the bushing assemblies out and free everything up. Would have been nice to see a little bit of weight savings, but there's really not a whole ton of weight on that old one, and we're definitely getting better suspension components. We're adding a power steering rack, adding a pretty beefy sway bar. We're getting coilover shocks. We're getting much larger front brakes with this new kit. So it's going to still be a big improvement, even if we don't see that improvement just on weight alone.
The fit was almost perfect.
Yeah, perfect. About what it was when we took the original subframe out. So, but that's all we have for you right now. We'll do a little bit of editing, make sure we get the scales in there, and you'll get to see a time lapse of all this, and it'll be good to go. But yeah, bigger and better things coming soon for the Nova now that I've got the subframe in and can start putting everything on it. So thanks so much for your help, Jeff, and we'll see you guys later.
See ya.